What's up, team? This is Bill Watkins with First Team Defense, and stay tuned for another episode of Tuesday Tips. Okay, we're back out here at the range, and today's Tuesday tip is going to be on the 4 universal safety rules. These 4 universal safety rules should be adhered to at all times, regardless if you're out on a public range, private range, you're out back shooting, or if you're just approaching a weapon. Okay, one of the first rules that we really have to be familiar with, and you just have to assume all weapons are loaded. Okay, that's the first universal safety rule of anything, is you have to assume that that weapon is loaded until you know it's not, until you have it cleared. Okay, so the first part of that rule, how do we make sure that that weapon is safe? How do we know that it's clear? If we just happen to come up on it, as we have a weapon here laying on the table, and we happen to see that weapon laying there, we can tell there's a magazine in it. The slide's closed on it, so obviously there could be one in the chamber also. So how do we clear this weapon? First of all, we're going to pick it up, and we're going to make sure our finger stays indexed. That's rule number 3 that we're going to go over here very, very shortly. But the first thing that we need to do is we need to take the food source away from the weapon. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to drop that magazine out of there. Now, of course, we've already cleared this gun. We know it's cleared. Don't anybody be freaking out. We made sure all that before we ever started. But you need to pull the magazine out. It's empty, of course. We're going to lay it down to the table right there, and the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come up here and we're going to make sure that there's not one in the chamber. Okay, now a lot of people will tell everybody to come up here and open the weapon up and lock it back to the rear. That'll eject if there's anything in here out of the chamber. Me, I like to do it 3 times, because the simple fact is things kind of get messed up, pins get wore. This is a machine. Sometimes it doesn't pick it up on the first time. So I always try to do it 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and make sure that there is nothing in there. Hopefully during that 3 times, it picked that empty casing up, or if there was a loaded round in there, it picked it up and it threw it out. Then I'm going to lock it back to the rear. Then I'm going to physically and visually check down in that chamber to make sure that there's nothing in that chamber. Okay? And we're also going to look down through the magazine well. I should be able to see my hand or the floor, whatever, down here. Anything but ammunition in the magazine. So at that point in time, when we see everything like this, we know that this weapon's clear, and we can lay it down and go from there. The second rule is to never point your weapon at anything you're not willing to destroy. Okay? If you're out on the range like we are today, and you're shooting at a target, that's all you should be shooting at. Don't be shooting over at your friend's target. Don't be waving the thing around and muzzling people. Okay, we went over that exclusively in one of our other videos that we've done about range etiquette. Don't be pointing your weapon at anything you're not willing to destroy, whether you think that the weapon's empty or not. Okay, and number 3 is to keep your finger off the trigger, outside the trigger guard, and keep it indexed at all times. This is where your finger should be. We don't want to see it down here on the trigger. We don't want to see it on the trigger guard, anything like that. You want to make sure you keep that finger indexed. When you come to one of our classes and you take one of our classes, you'll hear us all the time, index that finger. This is where we want you to keep your finger at up here. As long as this stays here and not on here, you don't get any negligent discharges. And I call it a negligent discharge because it is negligence on your part. You're not obeying the 4 safety rules. Everybody says, oh, it was an accidental shooting. There is no accidents. You negligently did not adhere to the rule. Okay? And the 4th rule is to know your target and what's beyond it. Okay? Not only know what's beyond it, but what's around it. You want to make sure that if you're out there on the range and you know your target's downrange. Here in wild and wonderful West Virginia, we have animals that might run across our ranges out here. You want to make sure that you don't hit any of them. Not only that, if you get into a self-defense situation, you need to know your target, what's around it, and what's beyond it. Because if you get into a self-defense situation, where does it usually happen at? It's going to happen out in public. Okay? We want to make sure that we don't end up hitting anybody except the bad guy that's trying to hit us. Okay? So as long as you adhere to those 4 safety rules, you'll never have to worry about the accidental or negligent discharge. Okay, we don't want to have any of that stuff. So number one, always assume that that weapon's loaded until you've cleared it and you know that it's not. And number two, you want to be out here and you want to make sure that you don't point your weapon at anything that you're not willing to destroy. And number three, keep your finger indexed and off that trigger and outside the trigger guard until you're on target and ready to shoot. And number four is to know your target, what's around it, and what's beyond it. Okay? All right, that's your Tuesday tip. I hope you guys are having a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Be safe, be vigilant, and always watch your six.